Michael Torres had driven for rideshare companies for 6 years, logging over 50,000 trips through every corner of the city. He knew which streets flooded in heavy rain, which neighborhoods tipped well, and which passengers would talk his ear off about their problems. At 38 years old, he'd become invisible, just another face behind the wheel, ferrying people to destinations while his own life remained stuck in neutral. But on a cold Thursday night in March, when he accepted a pickup request from the commercial port district, Michael had no idea he was about to make a delivery that would cost him everything he'd worked to protect.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The notification came through at 11:42 p.m., pulling Michael from the half-sleep state he'd fallen into while parked outside a closed coffee shop. His phone screen glowed with the familiar app interface. Pickup request, 4.9-star passenger rating, destination marked as 20 miles away in the warehouse district. The fare estimate showed $38. Not great, but better than sitting in an empty parking lot burning through what remained of his patience and his gas tank. Michael had made $92 in 7 hours of driving. He needed at least $120 to make the night worthwhile, to justify the time away from home, to add something meaningful to the pile of money that never seemed high enough. He accepted the ride. The GPS guided him through downtown, past the shuttered storefronts and the few remaining bars still serving last call to determined drinkers. The streets grew darker and more industrial as he drove, the gleaming towers of the financial district giving way to squat warehouses and shipping facilities surrounded by chain-link fencing. The pickup location sat at the edge of the port's commercial zone in a parking lot that serviced a freight company. Michael pulled in slowly, scanning for his passenger. A single figure stood beneath a flickering streetlight, a tall man in an expensive-looking overcoat that seemed out of place in the grimy industrial setting. The man approached the car with measured steps, and Michael got his first clear look at him through the passenger window. Late 40s, maybe early 50s, with gray threading through dark hair and the kind of groomed appearance that suggested wealth and attention to detail. He carried a leather messenger bag and moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in control. "Michael Torres?" the man asked, his voice carrying a faint accent that Michael couldn't quite identify. "That's me. Heading to the warehouse district? Actually, I need to make a modification to the destination." He slid into the back seat, and Michael caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else. Tobacco, maybe, or old books. "I'll guide you. The app destination is approximate." Red flag number 1. Passengers who wanted to go off-app usually had reasons that ranged from cheapskate to criminal. But the man's rating was high, and Michael had already accepted the ride. Canceling now would hurt his own rating and waste the 15 minutes he'd spent driving to the pickup. "I need to keep the ride in the app," Michael said carefully. "Company policy." "Of course. I'll update the destination once we're moving. I am Victor, by the way." He extended a hand between the seats. Michael shook it briefly, feeling the grip of someone who worked out or at least maintained physical strength despite his age. "Nice to meet you. Rough time to be working?" "Business doesn't respect the clock, unfortunately. I have a delivery to oversee tonight, and I need reliable transportation." Victor settled back in his seat. "You come highly recommended." "Recommended? This is just a rideshare pickup." "Yes, but I checked your profile before requesting. 6 years with the company, 4.97-star rating, over 50,000 completed trips. That suggests reliability and discretion, both of which I value." The way Victor said discretion made Michael's shoulders tense. This wasn't a normal ride. Whatever Victor needed, it wasn't just point A to point B transportation. "I just drive," Michael said, pulling out of the parking lot. "Discretion comes standard." They drove in silence for several minutes, following Victor's verbal directions through a maze of service roads that bypassed the main port entrance. Michael had driven through this area hundreds of times, but never on these particular streets. Narrow access roads meant for commercial vehicles, poorly lit and roughly maintained. "Tell me about yourself, Michael," Victor said, breaking the silence.
6 years is a long time to drive for these companies. What keeps you doing it? Bills, answered simply, same as everyone. No other work? No career aspirations? Michael's jaw tightened. He hated this question, hated the judgment implicit in it, hated admitting that his aspirations had died somewhere between his divorce and his daughter's diagnosis. I have a daughter. She's sick. The medical bills are expensive, and this job lets me set my own hours so I can be there when she needs me. The car fell silent again. Michael wondered if he'd shared too much, if Victor was one of those passengers who would now spend the rest of the ride offering unwanted advice about bootstraps and positive thinking. Instead, Victor said quietly, "I'm sorry. That must be difficult. We manage. How old is your daughter?" 11. Leukemia. She's in her second round of treatment. And insurance? Covers about 60%. The rest is on me. Michael didn't mention the collection notices, the payment plans he was already defaulting on, the constant calculation of which bill to pay and which to let slide another month. Turn left here? Right, actually. Follow this road for another mile. Victor leaned forward slightly. Michael, I'm going to be direct with you. I have a business opportunity that could help with those medical bills. It's not complicated, and it pays well, but it requires someone I can trust to be professional and discreet. Here it was, the moment Michael had sensed coming since Victor got in the car, the offer that would either be something mundane or something he'd regret entertaining. What kind of opportunity? I need cargo transported from this port to a warehouse across town. 6 crates, each about the size of a small cooler. The items inside are valuable and fragile. I'll pay you $5,000 to drive them there tonight. 2 hours of your time maximum. $5,000. The number hit Michael like a punch. $5,000 would cover 3 months of his daughter's uncovered medical expenses. $5,000 would let him sleep through a night without anxiety dreams about homelessness and bankruptcy. $5,000 was the difference between drowning and treading water. What's in the crates? Antiques, art pieces, items that certain people would prefer to acquire without going through official channels. You're talking about smuggling. I'm talking about helping valuable cultural artifacts find homes with people who will appreciate them, rather than letting them sit in warehouse storage where no one benefits. Victor's tone remained conversational, reasonable. Every instinct Michael had developed through 6 years of driving strangers screamed that this was wrong. Legitimate business didn't happen at midnight in port districts. Legitimate art dealers didn't offer $5,000 to rideshare drivers for a simple delivery. Legitimate anything didn't require discretion this explicitly. But $5,000. Michael thought about his daughter Emma, small for her age even before the cancer, now even smaller with the hollow cheeks and bald head that chemotherapy had given her. He thought about her brave smile when he visited, the way he pretended not to notice when he couldn't afford to bring her the book she wanted from the hospital gift shop. He thought about his ex-wife's exhausted voice on the phone. The hospital called again about the outstanding balance. I don't know what to tell them. Show me the cargo first, Michael heard himself say. Victor's expression shifted slightly, a flash of satisfaction quickly masked. Smart. Turn right at the next intersection. They drove deeper into the port complex, past shipping containers stacked like metal building blocks and massive cranes that loomed like frozen giants in the darkness. Victor directed him to a warehouse with a single rolling door standing partially open, light spilling from inside. Park here, Victor instructed. Michael pulled to a stop, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was the decision point. He could still refuse, could still drive away, could still choose safety over desperation. But he'd already come this far. He'd already listened to the offer. And $5,000. He followed Victor into the warehouse. The space inside was mostly empty, except for 6 wooden crates stacked near the door, each marked with white stenciled letters, fragile, handle with care. A second man stood near the crates, Asian, mid-30s, wearing tactical pants and a jacket that bulged suspiciously on the left side. Armed, Michael realized. The second man was armed. This is my associate, Victor said, not offering a name. "He'll help us load the crates."
Michael approached the nearest crate and ran his hand over the rough wood. The box was well constructed, professionally made, with metal reinforcement at the corners. Whatever was inside was valuable enough to warrant serious protection. "Open one," Michael said. "I want to see what I'm transporting." Victor exchanged a glance with his associate, some wordless communication passing between them. Then he nodded. Fair enough. The associate produced a crowbar and carefully pried open the nearest crate. Inside, nestled in custom foam padding, was a jade mask, a human face carved with extraordinary detail, the stone so pure it seemed to glow in the warehouse lighting. Even to Michael's untrained eye, the craftsmanship was obvious. This was ancient, valuable, and almost certainly shouldn't be in a warehouse in the middle of the night. "Pre-Columbian," Victor said softly. "Aztec. Approximately 1400 CE. Museums would call it priceless. Private collectors know better. Everything has a price." Michael stared at the mask, at its hollow eyes and slightly open mouth, and felt the weight of what he was about to do settle onto his shoulders. This wasn't bureaucratic red tape. This was theft, smuggling, trafficking in cultural artifacts that belonged in museums where people could see them and scholars could study them. But $5,000. "Half now," Michael said, his voice rough. "Half when we deliver." Victor pulled out his phone. "Account information?" Michael recited his bank details, hating himself, hating the desperation that had brought him here, hating the cancer that had put his daughter in a hospital bed and him in a warehouse making deals with smugglers. His phone buzzed. Payment received. $2,500. The money was real. Whatever else was happening, at least the money was real. "Let's load up," Victor said. They worked in silence, the three of them carrying crates from the warehouse to Michael's sedan. Each box was surprisingly heavy, dense in a way that suggested stone or metal. They filled the trunk and the back seat, arranging them carefully so nothing would shift during the drive. "The warehouse where we're delivering is in the old industrial district," Victor said once they'd finished loading. "I'll ride with you to ensure everything goes smoothly. My associate will follow in his own vehicle." "Why do you need to ride with me?" "Because I want to make sure you don't get nervous halfway through the drive and decide to call the police." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Trust goes both ways, Michael. You don't trust me completely, and I don't trust you completely. So we'll ride together, and everything will work out fine." They climbed into the car, Victor in the passenger seat this time, close enough that Michael could smell his cologne and see the expensive watch on his wrist. The associate followed in a black Mercedes with tinted windows, staying a car length behind as they pulled out of the Port District. "No GPS," Victor said when Michael reached for his phone. "I'll give you directions verbally." Red flag number 15, but Michael was already committed. He drove where Victor told him to drive, following a route that avoided major roads and traffic cameras, winding through neighborhoods he barely recognized, despite 6 years of driving every street in the city. "You're good at this," Michael said after 20 minutes of silent navigation. "You've planned this route carefully." "I plan everything carefully. That's why I'm successful." "You should understand something, Michael. The people I work with, the network that moves these items around the world, we're professionals. We're not thugs or random criminals. We're business people operating in a market that governments try to control but can't eliminate. Supply and demand doesn't stop just because something is illegal." "You're justifying theft." "I'm stating reality. These artifacts were created by civilizations that no longer exist. The descendants of those civilizations live in poverty while their ancestors' art sits in museum basements, seen by no one, appreciated by no one, generating no value for anyone. We change that. We put art in the hands of people who treasure it and are willing to pay for the privilege, while making yourselves rich in the process." "Of course.
Is that worse than museum curators making salaries while art collects dust? At least we're honest about our motivations. He wanted to argue, wanted to reject Victor's logic, but exhaustion and anxiety made thinking difficult. He focused on driving, on following directions, on getting through the next hour so he could collect his money and try to forget this night had ever happened. They entered the old industrial district, an area of abandoned factories and empty warehouses that had been dying slowly for decades. A few buildings showed signs of conversion into loft apartments or art studios, but most stood empty, their windows broken and their parking lots overgrown. "Slow down," Victor said. "The warehouse is on the left." Michael spotted it, a 3-story brick building with faded lettering that spelled something about manufacturing. A single light burned above a metal door. "Pull around to the loading dock." Michael navigated down a narrow alley, emerging into a small loading area surrounded by high brick walls. The black Mercedes pulled in behind them, blocking the exit. Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Trapped. The layout felt designed to prevent escape rather than facilitate deliveries. "Let's unload," Victor said. As they carry the crates into the warehouse, Michael sees something that changes everything. Detailed photographs pinned to the wall, showing the same artifacts they're unloading. But these photos have labels. Museo Nacional de Antropología, with dates from 3 weeks ago. These aren't privately acquired antiques. They're stolen from the museum theft that made international news. Michael isn't helping bypass red tape. He's an accomplice to one of the biggest art heists in history.
The warehouse interior was sparse. Concrete floors, exposed brick walls, and a few folding tables set up in the center of the space. But what caught Michael's attention, what made his blood go cold, was the wall covered in photographs. Large sheets of white paper had been taped to the brick, and on those sheets were dozens of high-resolution images of artifacts. Jade masks, gold jewelry, ceramic sculptures, stone carvings, each photographed from multiple angles with professional lighting. And in the corner of each image, clearly visible even from across the room, was a watermark, Museo Nacional de Antropología. Michael's mind raced back to 3 weeks ago, to a news report he'd heard while driving a passenger to the airport. A major theft from Mexico's National Museum of Anthropology. Armed men, sophisticated planning, 47 priceless artifacts stolen. The Mexican government had called it a cultural catastrophe. Interpol had issued international alerts. And Michael was standing in a warehouse with those stolen artifacts in crates beside him. "This is from the Mexico City theft," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The one that was all over the news." Victor set down the crate he'd been carrying and turned to face Michael with an expression of mild annoyance. "Yes, I was hoping you wouldn't make that connection, but you're smarter than I anticipated. You said these were privately acquired. You said they weren't stolen." "I said what I needed to say to get you to cooperate. Does it really matter? You've already transported them. You've already been paid. You're already complicit." The word complicit hit Michael like a physical blow. He wasn't just helping smugglers, he was an accomplice to international art theft. If the police caught him, if the FBI was investigating this, he'd go to prison. Not for months, for years. "I need to leave," Michael said, turning toward the door. Victor's associate moved smoothly to block his path, one hand resting on his jacket where the gun was holstered. The message was clear. Michael wasn't leaving until Victor allowed it. "Michael, I understand you're upset, but you need to think rationally." Victor's voice remained calm, almost soothing. "You've already committed a federal crime, transporting stolen property across state lines. You accepted payment into your bank account. There's security footage of you at the port loading these crates. If you panic now and try to go to the police, you'll only implicate yourself. I didn't know. Of course, you didn't know the specifics, but you knew something wasn't right.
Midnight pickups, $5,000 for a simple delivery, requests for discretion. You knew, Michael. Maybe you didn't know the details, but you knew you were doing something illegal. Michael's legs felt weak. Victor was right, he'd known. On some level, he'd known from the moment Victor made the offer. But he'd pushed that knowledge aside because he needed the money, because his daughter needed treatment, because desperation had made him willing to ignore his instincts. What happens now? Michael asked. Now we complete the transaction. A buyer is coming to inspect the pieces. Once the sale is finalized, you'll receive your remaining $2,500 and we'll all go our separate ways. You'll never hear from me again. The police will have no reason to connect you to any of this. Unless someone talks, no one will talk. Everyone involved in this operation has too much to lose. That includes you. He pulled out his phone and showed Michael the screen. It displayed security camera footage, grainy but clear enough to show Michael loading crates at the port. Insurance. I don't make deals without leverage. If you try to implicate me, this footage goes to the FBI with your name and account information. But if you stay calm and finish what you started, this footage gets deleted and you walk away with your money. Michael stared at the phone screen, at the damning evidence of his own crime. Victor had planned this perfectly. Every step had been designed to ensure Michael's cooperation through self-interest rather than force. How long until the buyer arrives? Michael asked, his voice hollow. An hour, perhaps less. Make yourself comfortable. The next 40 minutes were among the longest of Michael's life. He sat on a folding chair in the corner of the warehouse while Victor and his associate opened the crates and began cataloging the contents. Each artifact was removed with careful precision, photographed again, documented in a leather-bound notebook that Victor produced from his messenger bag. Victor worked with genuine passion, speaking quietly about historical context and artistic techniques and provenance. In another situation, Michael might have found it interesting. But here, surrounded by stolen treasures and armed men, the lecture felt surreal and horrifying. The Aztecs believed jade was more valuable than gold, Victor said, holding up a small carved figurine. They associated with water, with life itself, with the breath that sustains us. This piece probably belonged to a priest or high-ranking noble. See the glyph on the base? That's a date marker in their calendar system. Do you feel any guilt? Michael interrupted. These pieces belong to the Mexican people. They're part of their cultural heritage. You're stealing their history. Victor lowered the figurine carefully and met Michael's eyes. History belongs to whoever can preserve it. The Museum of Anthropology has thousands of artifacts in storage that no one ever sees. They sit in climate-controlled boxes, while scholars write papers that no one reads. Meanwhile, the Mexican people, whose heritage these supposedly represent, live in poverty. How does keeping art locked away help them? So you're stealing for altruistic reasons? I'm not stealing at all. The original creators are dead. Their civilization collapsed centuries ago. These objects are orphans of history, and I'm finding them new homes with people who will appreciate them. But no, I'm not altruistic. I do this for money. I'm honest about that. I just resent the moralizing from people who think art belongs in museums where only the privileged few have access. Before Michael could respond, Victor's associate spoke for the first time since they'd entered the warehouse. We have a problem.
He was staring at his phone, his expression tense. Victor moved to his side and read whatever was on the screen. Michael watched their faces change, watched concern replace the casual confidence they'd displayed all night. When did this alert go out? Victor asked quietly. 35 minutes ago. Federal authorities have connected the theft to shipping manifests from the port. They're running checks on all vehicles that entered the restricted area tonight. Michael's heart dropped into his stomach. The port had cameras. His license plate had been scanned, which meant federal authorities could trace his car to this location, which meant they'll find him, Victor said, jerking his head toward Michael. The rideshare account, the bank transfer, everything leads back to him. The associate looked at Michael with new assessment, and Michael saw the calculation happening behind those cold eyes. Michael was a liability now, a loose end, a problem that could be solved. I have an idea, Victor said slowly. Michael here is already implicated. He's on camera, he's received payment, he's transported the goods. But what if he became a victim instead of an accomplice? "What are you talking about?" Michael asked, his voice shaking. An Uber driver, trying to make money for his daughter's medical bills, gets hijacked by criminals, forced at gunpoint to transport stolen property. He cooperates because he fears for his life. When the police find him, he's traumatized and eager to help catch the real criminals. He's the hero of the story. The associate considered this. How do we sell it? We tie him up here with the crates, make it look like we abandoned him when we fled. He gives police vague descriptions that won't actually help them find us. By the time they mobilize, we're gone with the artifacts, and Michael is a cooperating victim who gets to go home to his daughter. It was insane. It was theatrical, but Michael could see the logic. Better to be a victim than a suspect. Better to be someone the police would want to help than someone they'd want to prosecute. Or, the associate said quietly, we solve the problem permanently. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Too messy, Victor said sharply. A missing driver whose last known location was the port. That brings heat we don't need. But a scared driver who helps the police, that's a dead end for their investigation. The associate nodded slowly. How much time do we have? An hour, maybe less, before they trace his vehicle here. We need to move the artifacts now. Victor turned to Michael. I know this is frightening, but this is actually the best outcome for you. You cooperate, play the victim, and you walk away without charges. The police will see you as someone who is coerced. And Michael, I'll wire you an additional $20,000 once you've given your statement and this has blown over. Think of it as payment for your cooperation. $20,000. Enough to cover Emma's treatment for months. Enough to rebuild the savings he'd depleted. Enough to make this nightmare almost worthwhile. But first, he had to survive. What do I tell the police? Michael asked. The truth, mostly. 2 men forced you at gunpoint to transport cargo. You were terrified. You did what they said. When they left you tied up, you eventually worked yourself free and called for help. Give vague descriptions. Asian man, white man, both armed. Don't mention names. Say you were blindfolded and driven around. You don't know where you were taken. The associate produced duct tape and gestured for Michael to sit. Every instinct screamed at Michael to run, to fight, to refuse. But the gun was real and his options were limited. He sat. The tape went around his wrists, then his ankles, securing him to the folding chair. The associate worked with professional efficiency, making the bonds tight enough to be convincing, but loose enough that Michael could eventually escape. In about an hour, Victor said, kneeling in front of Michael, an anonymous call will tip police to suspicious activity here. When they find you, act traumatized. Tell your story. Cooperate fully. Don't try to be clever or add details. Just be a scared driver who wants to move on with his life. Michael nodded, not trusting his voice. Victor and the associate began loading the crates into the Mercedes, working quickly now. Michael watched from his chair, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. He could cooperate with Victor's plan, could play the victim, could take the money and try to forget this nightmare. Or he could tell the truth and hope the police would believe he'd been manipulated. The mathematics were brutal either way. They made 3 trips, transferring all 6 crates from Michael's car to the Mercedes. On their final trip out, Victor paused in the doorway. I'm sorry it worked out this way. For what it's worth, you're a good man in a bad situation. That's more common than you'd think. Then they were gone. The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of Michael's breathing and the distant hum of the city outside. Michael sat in the darkness and began working on the duct tape around his wrists. Victor's associate had left just enough slack. It would take time, but Michael could get free. The question was, what would he do then? After 20 minutes of struggling, Michael manages to free one hand. But just as he's about to remove the rest of the tape, he hears the warehouse door opening. Someone's coming back, but it's not Victor. Multiple voices, tactical movements,
flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. Then a voice calls out, "Michael Reeves, FBI, don't move. Federal agents have arrived hours early. Michael is about to be arrested as a criminal rather than interviewed as a victim."
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The FBI agent was a woman in her early 40s with short dark hair and the kind of intense focus that made Michael feel like he was being X-rayed rather than observed. Her badge read, "Special Agent Reeves." "Mr. Torres, I'm going to cut the tape, but you need to stay calm and keep your hands where I can see them." She produced a knife and carefully sliced through the duct tape around his wrists. "Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "No, I'm okay." Michael's voice came out rough. His mind spun through implications and fears. How had they found him so fast? What did they know? How much trouble was he in? 4 more agents moved through the warehouse with tactical precision, checking corners, clearing the space, ensuring no threats remained. One of them called out, "Clear, no hostiles, no cargo." No cargo. Victor and his associate had taken everything, which meant Michael was sitting in an empty warehouse with duct tape residue on his wrists and no evidence of what he'd helped transport. Agent Reeves pulled up one of the folding chairs and sat facing Michael. "Let me tell you what I know, and then you can fill in the gaps. 3 weeks ago, 47 pre-Columbian artifacts were stolen from the Museo Nacional de Antropología in Mexico City. The theft was sophisticated and well-planned. We've been working with Mexican authorities and Interpol to track the artifacts." Michael said nothing, his heart hammering. 2 days ago, we got a break. Shipping manifests from a cargo vessel heading to this city's port showed suspicious freight heading to this city's port. We set up surveillance and watched the port all day. And tonight, we saw something interesting. A rideshare vehicle entering a restricted area just before midnight. That vehicle then drove to this location. That was your car, Michael. We have you on camera at the port. We have traffic camera footage of your route here. And we have financial records showing a $2,500 transfer to your account tonight. "I was forced," Michael started. "2 men, they had guns." "Stop." Reeves held up a hand. "Before you say anything else, you need to understand your situation. Right now, you are a suspect in international trafficking of stolen cultural property. That's a federal crime carrying up to 10 years in prison. Everything you say from this point forward can and will be used against you. Do you understand? I want a lawyer." "That's your right, but before you make that decision, consider this. You are the first person we've caught in this operation. That makes you valuable. The people who hired you are still out there with 47 priceless artifacts. If you cooperate, if you help us catch them and recover the property, I can talk to the prosecutor about reducing your charges. But if you lawyer up and refuse to cooperate, you're just another criminal we'll prosecute to the fullest extent of the law." Michael's mind raced. Victor had warned him this might happen, had prepared him for this exact scenario. Play the victim, give vague descriptions, don't provide details that could help them. Take the money and stay quiet. But Victor had also lied about everything else. The artifacts weren't legally acquired. The plan to frame Michael as a victim was contingent on him being found hours later, not minutes. And $20,000 in additional payment seemed unlikely to materialize now that the FBI was involved. "They used me," Michael said quietly. "I didn't know what I was transporting until I got here and saw the photos on the wall." Reeves' expression didn't change. "Start from the beginning. Tell me everything." Michael talked for the next hour, describing every detail he could remember. The rideshare pickup at the port, Victor's offer of $5,000, the crates marked fragile, the ride to the warehouse, the moment he saw the museum watermarks on the photographs and realized he'd helped transport stolen property. Reeves listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a tablet. Other agents moved through the warehouse, photographing the empty crates and the photographs still taped to the walls, documenting the crime scene. "You said one of the men was Asian, armed, and didn't give a name?" Reeves confirmed. "Right. Victor called him an associate, but they clearly knew each other well. They worked together like a team." "And Victor, describe him in detail." Michael closed his eyes, trying to recall every feature. Late 40s, maybe 6 feet tall, gray in his dark hair. European accent, but soft like he'd been in America for years. Expensive taste in clothes and accessories. He talked about the artifacts like he genuinely cared about them, not just their value.
Did he seem professional, like someone who'd done this before? Absolutely. Everything was planned. The route-avoiding cameras, the leverage he had over me with the security footage, the way he'd thought through contingencies. This wasn't his first time. Reeves nodded slowly, as if confirming something she'd already suspected. Michael, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Did Victor ever mention his real name? Did his associate ever call him anything other than Victor? No, just Victor. Why? Because I think I know who your Victor is, and if I'm right, you've gotten involved in something much bigger than a simple smuggling operation. Reeves pulled out her tablet and showed Michael a photograph. The man in the image looked like Victor but younger, cleaner cut, wearing a suit and standing in front of an official-looking banner with the Interpol logo. This is Victor Molina. He's an Interpol agent specializing in art theft and cultural property crimes. 3 years ago, he went undercover to infiltrate an international smuggling ring. The Museum of Anthropology theft was supposed to be his operation's endgame. Interpol would intercept the artifacts and arrest everyone involved. Michael stared at the photograph, his exhausted mind struggling to process this new information. You're saying Victor's a cop? Was a cop. About 6 months ago, Interpol lost contact with him. They assumed his cover was blown or that he'd been killed, but now we think something else happened. We think Agent Molina decided the artifacts were worth more to him than his career. He sabotaged his own operation and stole the pieces for himself. How do you sabotage your own operation? By feeding false information to your handlers, by making the smugglers think you're compromised, by arranging for the theft to happen when you're the only person who knows the full plan. Reeves swiped to another photo, this one showing the Asian man Michael had seen in the warehouse. This is Chen Wei, former Chinese intelligence officer who was also working with Interpol on the same case. We think he and Molina partnered up, decided to go rogue together. Michael's head spun. He'd been used by corrupt law enforcement officers who had the resources and knowledge to make their crime almost impossible to solve. No wonder Victor had been so professional, so careful, so confident. If Victor knows how police investigations work, Michael said slowly, then he knows you're looking for me. He knows you'd trace my car. He might have even planned for that. What do you mean? He told me to play the victim, said I should give vague descriptions and cooperate with police. He said he'd pay me $20,000 after I'd given my statement. But maybe that was never the plan. Maybe he was just keeping me calm while he escaped, and he doesn't care what happens to me now. Reeves studied Michael's face, seeming to assess his sincerity. Or maybe he does plan to pay you, and he's using you as bait. If we're focused on you, we're not focused on finding him. Either way, I'm screwed. Not necessarily. Reeves set down her tablet. Michael, I've read your file. 6 years driving for rideshare companies with an excellent record, no criminal history. A daughter in cancer treatment. By all accounts, you're a decent person who made a terrible decision out of desperation. That matters. Does it matter legally? It matters to me. And it might matter to a judge if we can show you were manipulated by experienced criminals who knew exactly how to exploit your vulnerability. But here's what I need from you. Victor Molina is still out there, with 47 stolen artifacts worth tens of millions of dollars. He has resources, connections, and 3 years of undercover experience that taught him how to avoid detection. But they have one weakness. What's that?
Greed. They didn't steal 47 artifacts to hide them in a basement. They stole them to sell them, which means they need buyers, which means they need to make contact with the criminal networks they spent 3 years infiltrating. And that gives us an opportunity to catch them. How? Reeves turned to face Michael. By using you as bait. The plan Reeves outlined was simultaneously simple and terrifying. Michael would go home, act normally, wait for Victor to contact him with the promised payment. When Victor reached out, Michael would cooperate, would agree to keep quiet, would do whatever Victor asked. But he'd also be wearing a wire, and FBI agents would be tracking his every move. You want me to spy on a corrupt Interpol agent who knows every surveillance technique in the book? Michael asked incredulously. I want you to do what he already expects you to do. Take his money and keep your mouth shut. The only difference is that we'll be listening. Reeves pulled out a business card. This is my direct number. You call me the second Victor makes contact. Don't try to handle it yourself.
Don't improvise, just call me immediately. And if he doesn't contact me, if he's already left the country, then we pursue other leads and you cooperate with the prosecution's case against him. But I think he'll contact you. He's your insurance policy. If you stay quiet and cooperative, you make him look credible to his buyers. A scared driver who backed his story gives him legitimacy. Michael took the card, his hands shaking slightly. What happens to me after this is over, assuming we catch them and recover the artifacts? That depends on a lot of factors. How much you cooperate, how helpful your information proves, whether the prosecutor believes you were genuinely coerced. Reeves' expression softened. I'll advocate for leniency. I'll make sure the judge understands your circumstances. But I can't make promises, Michael. You did commit a crime, even if you were manipulated into it. I could go to prison. You could. Or you could get probation and community service, or the charges could be reduced to something minimal. I honestly don't know. What I do know is that cooperating fully is your best chance at avoiding serious prison time. Michael thought about Emma, about who would visit her during treatments if he was locked up, about who would hold her hand when she was scared, about who would be there when she got the news that she was in remission or that the cancer had spread. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do it. I'll help you catch them. Reeves drove Michael back to his car, which was still parked at the warehouse. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that seemed absurdly beautiful given the nightmare Michael had just endured. Go home, Reeves instructed. Get some rest. Try to act normally. If Victor contacts you, call me immediately. Don't respond to him until we've talked. What do I tell my ex-wife, Emma's mother? Nothing. The less people who know about this, the better. If Emma asks why you weren't at the hospital today, tell her you had car trouble or you weren't feeling well. Keep it simple. Michael nodded and climbed into his car. His phone, which he'd silenced during the long night, showed 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. Most were from the rideshare app, wondering why he'd gone offline mid-shift. 2 were from his ex-wife, Emma is asking about you, and call me when you can. He drove home on autopilot, his mind too exhausted to process everything that had happened. At some point during the drive, his phone buzzed with a bank notification. Payment received $2,500. Victor's second payment, arriving exactly when promised. Michael stared at the notification. $5,000 total now sat in his account, money that was simultaneously real and evidence of his crime. Money that could help Emma, but would also help convict him if things went wrong. He parked in his apartment complex's lot and sat in his car for 10 minutes, trying to gather the energy to move. Other residents were starting their days, people heading to legitimate jobs where they do legitimate work for legitimate pay. Normal people living normal lives that didn't involve stolen artifacts and corrupt agents and federal investigations. Michael used to be one of those normal people. Now he was a criminal informant helping the FBI catch international art smugglers. The distance between those two identities felt impossibly vast. Yet he'd crossed it in a single night. His phone rang. Unknown number. Michael's heart stopped. He stared at the screen, remembering Reeves' instruction, call me the second Victor makes contact. But what if this wasn't Victor? What if it was just a spam call or a wrong number? He answered. Hello? Michael. Victor's voice smooth and calm and professional. I trust you made it home safely. Michael tightened his hand around the phone. I made it home. Good. I imagine you've had quite a night. The police probably found you shortly after we left, asked you many questions, tried to frighten you into cooperating against me. They found me. They asked questions. And what did you tell them? I told them what you said to tell them. 2 armed men forced me to transport cargo. I was scared. I did what they said. I gave vague descriptions that won't help you find you. Very good. And the $20,000 I promised? You're still interested in receiving that? Yes. Excellent. The money will be transferred to your account within 24 hours. But, Michael, I need you to understand something very clearly. If you betray me,
If you cooperate with the FBI beyond what you've already told them, there will be consequences. Not threats, just reality. I have resources and connections that you can't imagine. I will know if you're working with them. Do you understand? I understand. I hope so, because I genuinely like you, Michael. I think you're a good father doing your best in a difficult situation. I'd hate for this to end badly for you or your daughter. How is Emma doing, by the way? Still at Children's Medical Center on the 4th floor, room 412? The specific details made Michael's blood run cold. Victor knew Emma knew her room number. The message was clear: cooperate or face consequences. She's doing okay, Michael managed. Treatment is tough, but she's strong. I'm glad to hear it. Take care of her, Michael, and take care of yourself. We'll speak again soon. The line went dead. Michael sat in his car, shaking, staring at his phone. Victor had just threatened Emma, subtly but unmistakably, which meant that cooperating with the FBI wasn't just about saving himself from prison anymore. It was about protecting his daughter from a man who had the skills and resources to hurt her. He pulled out Agent Reeves' card and dialed her number. Michael meets with Reeves and explains Victor's threat. The FBI puts protection on Emma at the hospital, but then they discover something horrifying. Chen was spotted near the medical center 2 hours ago. They weren't just making threats, they were already moving into position. The FBI realizes Victor and Chen are more dangerous than expected, and they need to catch them immediately. But to do that, they need Michael to accept the money transferred and arrange a face-to-face meeting. Michael must choose between his safety and his daughter's.
Agent Reeves arrived at Michael's apartment building 20 minutes after his call, accompanied by 2 other agents. They sat in Michael's cramped living room, a space that suddenly felt even smaller with federal agents occupying it, and listened to the recording Michael had made of Victor's call. "He knows where Emma is," Reeves said grimly. "Room number, floor, hospital name. That's not casual knowledge. He's been watching you." "Can you protect her?" Michael asked. "Can you keep her safe?" "We're putting 2 agents at the hospital right now. They'll be positioned outside a room, and we'll coordinate with hospital security to monitor all entrances." Reeves made a call, speaking in low, urgent tones to someone on the other end. When she finished, her expression was troubled. "Michael, I need to show you something." She pulled out her tablet and displayed security camera footage from the hospital. The timestamp showed 2 hours ago, while Michael had been at the warehouse giving his statement. The video showed a man in hospital scrubs walking through the corridor past Emma's room, glancing at the door, then continuing on. "That's Chen," Reeves said grimly. "He was already at the hospital. He wasn't just making threats, he was conducting reconnaissance." Michael's vision swam. While he'd been talking to the FBI, Chen had been at the hospital where Emma slept, vulnerable and unaware. If they'd wanted to hurt her, they could have. The only reason they hadn't was because they still needed Michael's cooperation. "They're more dangerous than we initially assessed," Reeves continued. "Molina and Chen aren't just corrupt agents running a smuggling operation. They're professionals who've turned their training into a weapon. They know how to surveil targets, how to identify vulnerabilities, how to apply pressure without leaving evidence." "What do we do?" Michael's voice came out strangled. "We accelerate our timeline. We can't wait for them to make the next move. We need to catch them now before they have time to disappear or follow through on their threats." Reeves leaned forward. "When Victor transfers the money, you're going to thank him. Then you're going to tell him you're worried about the FBI continuing to investigate and you want reassurance that this is really over. You're going to ask for a face-to-face meeting. He'll never agree to that. He's too careful. He will if you make it sound like you're more afraid of him than you are of the FBI. Tell him you need to know that you and Emma are safe, that he's not going to suddenly decide you're a liability. Play to his ego. Make him think you see him as powerful and in control. And when we meet, what happens then? We'll have agents positioned everywhere. The moment he shows himself, we move in. You'll be wearing a wire, and we'll have visual surveillance from multiple angles. He won't be able to escape." Michael wanted to believe it would be that simple, but he had spent a night with Victor, had seen how carefully the man planned, how many contingencies he considered. Victor wouldn't walk into a trap unless he was absolutely certain it wasn't a trap. What if he suspects something? What if he realizes I'm working with you?
Then we execute Plan B. We arrest you publicly, make it look like you're facing serious charges, and see if that brings him out of hiding to protect his leverage over you. Reeves' expression was sympathetic but firm. I won't lie to you, Michael. This is dangerous. Victor and Chen have already proven they're willing to threaten children. But we're out of other options. If we don't catch them now, they'll disappear, and you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Michael thought about Emma, about the smile she had given him the last time he visited, despite feeling sick from chemotherapy. He thought about all the visits he had missed because he was driving strangers around the city trying to make money. He thought about how close he'd come to losing everything, his freedom, his daughter, his future. Okay, he said. I'll do it. I'll set up the meeting. The money transfer came through 12 hours later, $20,000, as Victor had promised. Michael stared at the notification, at the number that represented both salvation and damnation. With this money, he could pay off 3 months of Emma's medical bills. But accepting it also meant accepting his role in Victor's scheme, meant continuing to be complicit in the theft of priceless cultural artifacts. Following Reeves' script, Michael sent a text message to the number Victor had called from. Thank you for the payment, but I'm worried. The FBI is still asking questions. I need to know this is really over. Can we meet? I need reassurance that my daughter is safe. The response came 30 minutes later. Michael, I understand your concern. Meeting in person is risky for both of us, but I appreciate your honesty. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverside Park near the boat launch. Come alone. If I see any indication of FBI presence, I disappear, and you never hear from me again. But you might hear from my associate. Michael showed the message to Reeves, who had taken up semi-permanent residence in an unmarked van down the street from his apartment building. Riverside Park is good for us, she said, studying a map on her tablet. Open space, multiple sightlines, easy to position agents as civilians. He chose it because it's public. He thinks crowds will protect him, but it works in our favor too. What if he doesn't show? What if he sends someone else? Then we follow that person and see where they lead us. But my guess is Victor will show. His ego won't let him send a subordinate. He'll want to look you in the eye and make sure you understand his power over you. Michael spent that night lying awake, staring at a ceiling, running through every possible way the meeting could go wrong. The FBI could miss Victor in the crowds. Victor could spot the surveillance and flee. Chen could be at the hospital at that exact moment, ready to hurt Emma if the meeting went bad. 1,000 possibilities, most of them catastrophic. At midnight, Michael gave up on sleep and drove to the hospital. The 2 FBI agents Reeves had stationed outside Emma's room nodded to him as he approached. One was dressed as a nurse, the other as a maintenance worker, but their alert posture and constant scanning of the corridor gave them away to anyone who knew what to look for. Emma was asleep, her small form barely making a bump under the hospital blankets. Michael sat in the chair beside her bed and watched her breathe, watched the steady rise and fall of her chest, watched the IV drip slowly releasing medication into her system. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. "I'm sorry I got us into this. I'm sorry I made such terrible choices. I'm going to fix it. I promise. I'm going to fix it." Emma stirred slightly, but didn't wake. Michael stayed until the nurse came in for the 2 a.m. check, then reluctantly left. He had 14 hours until the meeting with Victor. 14 hours to prepare himself for what might be the most important and dangerous conversation of his life. Riverside Park at 2 p.m. on a Friday afternoon was crowded with people enjoying the unseasonably warm weather. Joggers followed the path along the river, families spread blankets on the grass, a food truck near the parking lot sold tacos and lemonade to a line of customers. Michael arrived 15 minutes early, as instructed by Reeves. He wore a light jacket that concealed the wire taped to his chest, and he carried his phone in his hand so the FBI could track his location in real time. Somewhere in the crowds were a dozen federal agents dressed as civilians, watching, waiting, ready to move. But Michael couldn't spot any of them, which meant Victor probably couldn't either. He walked slowly towards the boat launch, trying to appear nervous and uncertain, which wasn't difficult because that's exactly how he felt. His eyes scanned the crowds, looking for Victor's tall frame and expensive coat. At 2:07 p.m., his phone buzzed with a text. "Turn around. Walk towards the river. Stop at the 3rd bench." Michael followed the instructions, his heart pounding. Victor wasn't at the park yet. He was somewhere else, watching, making sure Michael was alone before revealing himself. The 3rd bench sat empty, with a view of the river. Michael sat down, his hands shaking slightly. Another text arrived.
Look in the trash can to your right. Take the phone inside, leave your phone on the bench. This was it. Victor was taking away Michael's FBI tracking device, replacing it with a phone he could control. Michael glanced at the trash can and saw a plastic bag inside containing a cheap, prepaid phone. He retrieved it, set his own phone on the bench, as instructed, and waited. The new phone rang immediately. Michael answered. Very good. Now walk north along the river path. Keep walking until I tell you to stop. Michael stood and began walking, acutely aware that he was no longer being tracked by the FBI. The wire would still transmit audio, but without GPS, the agents wouldn't know exactly where he was. If Victor led him away from the park, into a vehicle or a building, the FBI might lose him altogether. You're worried, Victor said in his ear. I can hear it in your breathing. But there's no reason to be worried, Michael. I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to ensure we can talk privately. Where are you? Close. Keep walking. Tell me, have you spoken to the FBI since our last conversation? This was the test. The question Victor had been building toward. Michael's answer would determine whether Victor believed him or whether this meeting ended with violence. They came to my apartment yesterday, Michael said, sticking to the script Reeves had prepared. They asked more questions about what you look like, about where you might have gone. I told them I didn't know anything more than what I'd already said, but they're not giving up. They keep pushing. And what do you think they want from you? They want me to help them catch you. They offered a deal, testify against you, help them build a case, and they'll reduce my charges. And you're considering it. No, I'm not suicidal. You've made it very clear what would happen if I betrayed you. But I need to know that you're not going to decide I'm too much of a risk. I need to know that Emma is safe. Silence on the line. Michael kept walking, past joggers and dog walkers, moving farther from the park center where the FBI agents were positioned. Stop at the blue boathouse ahead. Go inside. We'll talk face to face. The boathouse was a small structure used for storing kayaks and paddleboards, sitting at the edge of the park where it bordered a more industrial area. Michael approached it with growing dread. This wasn't the public meeting Reeves had anticipated. This was Victor isolating him, taking him to a location where the FBI couldn't intervene without revealing themselves. Michael pushed open the boathouse door. Inside the boathouse, Michael finds not Victor, but Chen. And Chen is holding Emma. They had taken her from the hospital during Michael's walk through the park, using the distraction to slip past the FBI agents. Victor's voice comes through the phone. I told you I have resources you can't imagine. Now you're going to do exactly what I say, or your daughter pays for your betrayal. The FBI has been outmaneuvered. Michael must make an impossible choice.
Emma stood in the corner of the boathouse, her hospital gown visible under a jacket someone had thrown over her shoulders. Her face was pale with fear and confusion. Chen stood behind her, one hand resting on her shoulder in a gesture that looked gentle but carried an unmistakable threat. "Dad?" Emma's voice was small, frightened. "What's happening? This man said you needed me, but I don't understand." "Emma, it's okay." Michael forced calm into his voice even as panic tore through him. "Everything's going to be okay." Victor's voice continued through the phone. "I apologize for the dramatics, Michael, but you've put me in a difficult position. My associate noticed FBI agents at the hospital. We heard you mention the FBI during our call. It became clear that you were cooperating with them, despite your promises otherwise." "I wasn't." "Please don't insult my intelligence. The wire you're wearing, the agents in the park, the tracker in your phone. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate these moves? I spent 3 years as an undercover agent. I know every surveillance technique, every tactical approach, every way law enforcement tries to catch criminals. You were never going to outsmart me." Michael's mind raced. Chen had taken Emma while Michael was walking through the park, had somehow bypassed the FBI protection and removed her from the hospital, which meant Victor had been planning this contingency from the beginning, had known Michael might cooperate with the authorities, had prepared for exactly this scenario. "What do you want?" Michael asked hoarsely. "I want you to stop making this complicated.
You're going to tell the FBI that this meeting was a waste of time, that I never showed up, that you have no new information. You're going to refuse any further cooperation. And you're going to do it convincingly, Michael, because my associate will be watching. If he sees any indication that you're still working with them, if he notices FBI surveillance or suspects you're wearing a wire, Emma goes with him, and you'll never see her again. Emma started crying quietly, her thin shoulders shaking. Chen's expression remained neutral, professional, showing no emotion about holding a sick 11-year-old girl hostage. "Please," Michael said. "She's just a child. She's sick. She needs to be in the hospital getting treatment. Whatever you want from me, I'll do it, but let her go." "I will let her go. Once I'm safely out of the country with my merchandise, once I've completed my sales and secured my future, I'll release her unharmed. But that's several days away, Michael. Can you imagine 3 days of your daughter in Chen's custody? 3 days of wondering if she's getting her medications? 3 days of her being terrified and alone?" Michael's vision blurred with tears. "Don't do this." "I'm not doing anything. You forced this situation by involving the FBI. You made the choice to betray me, and now you're experiencing the consequences of that choice. But I'm offering you a way out. Send the FBI away, stop cooperating, and Emma comes home tonight, safe and healthy." Through his fear and desperation, Michael's mind worked through the implications. If he refused to cooperate with the FBI, Victor would escape. The stolen artifacts would be sold, dispersed to private collections around the world, lost forever to the cultures they came from. Victor and Chen would live wealthy lives in countries without extradition treaties, free and unpunished for their crimes. But Emma would be safe. The mathematics were brutal and simple. "Okay," Michael said. "I'll do what you want. Just don't hurt her." "Very wise. Now, walk back to your original phone. Tell the FBI agents that I didn't show up for the meeting. Act disappointed and frustrated. Chen will be watching from a distance. If he's satisfied that you've followed instructions, he'll release Emma at the hospital entrance in 2 hours. Are we clear?" "Yes." "Good. Oh, and Michael, don't try to be clever. Don't think you can signal the FBI somehow or create a distraction that lets them intervene. Chen is a professional. If he senses any threat, he'll disappear with Emma, and you'll regret it for the rest of your life." The call ended. Michael looked at his daughter, at her frightened eyes and trembling hands, at the IV bruise still visible on her arm from where someone had disconnected her from her medications. Every instinct screamed at him to rush Chen, to fight, to do something, anything to protect her. But Chen's hand remained on Emma's shoulder, and his stance suggested readiness to move quickly if Michael tried anything. And even if Michael somehow overpowered Chen, what then? Victor was somewhere else, unreachable, holding all the leverage. "I love you, Emma," Michael said quietly. "This is going to be over soon. You're going to be okay." "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know, but you're the bravest person I know. You fought cancer. You can handle 2 hours of being scared. And then you'll be back at the hospital, and I'll be there, and this will all just be a bad memory." Michael turned and walked out of the boathouse, leaving his daughter with the professional criminal, making a choice that might save her life or might damn them both. He walked back through the park on shaking legs, past the crowds of people enjoying their normal Friday afternoons, past the joggers and families who had no idea that a terrified father had just sacrificed everything to protect his child. He reached the bench where he'd left his phone. It sat there undisturbed, along with a message from Agent Reeves. "What's your status? You went dark for 12 minutes. Michael picked up the phone and called her number. "I'm at the meeting spot. He didn't show up. It was all a setup to make sure I came alone. We're moving to your location now. Stay where you are." Within minutes, Reeves and 3 other agents converged on the bench. They looked frustrated but not surprised. Apparently, suspects failing to show up for meetings happened often enough that they'd planned for this contingency. Did you get any communication from him? Any indication of where he might be? Nothing. Just that first text telling me to come here, and then silence. The lie felt heavy in Michael's mouth, but Emma's terrified face filled his mind. 2 hours. He just had to maintain this deception for 2 hours and Emma would be safe. Damn it. Reeves looked around the park, clearly hoping to spot Victor in the crowds. He must have been watching from a distance, saw our surveillance, and decided it wasn't safe. So what happens now? Now we regroup. We analyze what went wrong, figure out our next approach. She focused on Michael. Are you okay? You look terrible. I'm fine, just disappointed. I thought we were going to catch him. They walked back to Reeves' van, and Michael gave a statement about the failed meeting. Every minute felt like an hour. He watched the clock on the van's dashboard, counting down the 120 minutes until Emma's promised release. If Chin kept his word, if Victor wasn't lying, if this wasn't all an elaborate setup to punish Michael for cooperating with the FBI. The fear was suffocating, but Michael maintained his act. He answered questions. He reviewed security footage from the park that showed him walking alone, talking on a phone, looking confused when no one appeared. The FBI had captured everything except what happened in the boathouse, except the moment when Michael's entire world had been turned upside down. At 4:15 p.m., Michael's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, his hand shaking. Hello? Michael, this is hospital security. Your daughter was just found at the main entrance. She appears to be okay, just very shaken up. We're taking her back to her room now, and we've called the police because she says she was taken from her room by someone claiming to be hospital staff. Michael closed his eyes, relief so intense it felt like physical pain washing through him. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He ended the call and looked at Reeves. That was the hospital. Emma was just returned. Someone took her from her room and then brought her back. Reeves' expression shifted instantly from frustrated to alarmed. Someone took your daughter? When? I don't know. They just found her at the entrance. Michael grabbed his jacket and headed for the van door. I need to go. I need to be with her. Michael, wait. This might be connected to Victor. If they took your daughter, that means they were trying to pressure you. Did he contact you again? Did something else happen during that 12 minutes when you went dark? This was the moment. He could tell the truth now, could explain about the boathouse and Chen and Victor's threats. The FBI would investigate, would put real protection on Emma, would understand that Victor was even more dangerous than they thought. But Victor would know Michael had talked, would know Michael had violated their agreement, and next time Victor might not return Emma at all. I don't know what happened, Michael lied. I need to be with my daughter. He left before Reeves could ask more questions, before she could see through his deception, before the weight of what he'd done could break him completely.
Emma sat in her hospital bed, wrapped in blankets despite the warm room, her eyes still wide with lingering fear. A police officer stood in the corner taking notes while a doctor checked her vitals and reconnected her IV. Dad? Emma reached for Michael as he entered, and he pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of the tubes and wires. I'm here. You're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you. The man said you needed me for something important. He showed me a hospital badge, and everything looked right, so I went with him. But then we left the hospital and got in a car, and I knew something was wrong. Emma's voice shook. I asked to call you, but he said we couldn't, that we had to go somewhere first. And then we were in this building by the water, and you were there, and... It's okay, Michael interrupted gently, not wanting her to describe the boathouse in front of the police officer. You're safe now. That's all that matters. The officer approached. Mr. Torres, I need to ask you some questions. Your daughter says you were at the location where she was held. Can you explain what happened? Michael had known this was coming, had rehearsed his story during the drive to the hospital. I received the call telling me my daughter had been taken and giving me instructions to come alone to Riverside Park. When I got there, I was directed to a boathouse. My daughter was inside with the man who had taken her. He said it was a warning about some rideshare passenger who felt I'd treated him badly. He let Emma go and told me to leave.
I was in shock. I just wanted to get her safe. It all happened so fast. The lie was thin and unconvincing, but Michael was counting on the officer being too focused on Emma's safety to press too hard. And it worked. The officer made notes but seemed more concerned with getting a description of the kidnapper than interrogating Michael's story. After the police left and the doctor finished her examination, Michael sat alone with Emma. She'd fallen into an exhausted sleep, her hand clutching his even in unconsciousness. Michael watched her breathe and felt the full weight of what he'd done settle onto his shoulders. He'd let a criminal escape to protect his daughter. He'd lied to federal agents. He prioritized one life over justice, one person over the cultural heritage of an entire nation. By any moral calculus, it was wrong. But looking at Emma's sleeping face, at the daughter he'd almost lost, Michael couldn't bring himself to regret it. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You made the right choice. The money in your account is yours to keep. Consider it payment for your discretion. You'll never hear from me again." Then another text with an attachment, a video file. Michael's hands shook as he opened it. The video showed Victor sitting in what looked like a private jet, the jade Aztec mask sitting on the table in front of him. He smiled at the camera. "Michael, I wanted to thank you personally for your cooperation. I know the choice you made today was difficult, but you chose family over abstract concepts of justice, and that's admirable. Your daughter is lucky to have a father willing to sacrifice his principles for her safety." Victor picked up the mask, turning it to catch the light. "This piece will go to a collector in Singapore who's been searching for authentic Aztec artifacts for decades. He'll treasure it, study it, appreciate it in ways no museum visitor ever would. In a sense, you've helped preserve history by ensuring these objects find homes with people who truly value them." The video ended. Michael deleted it immediately, then checked to make sure his phone had truly erased it. Victor was tying up loose ends, ensuring Michael had no evidence of their final communication, no proof that could be used against him later. It was over. Victor had escaped with the artifacts. Michael had $5,000 of blood money sitting in his account. Emma was safe but traumatized, and Michael would have to live with the knowledge that he'd let international criminals escape justice to protect his daughter. The door opened, and Agent Reeves entered, her expression grave. "How is she?" Reeves asked quietly. "Scared, exhausted, but physically okay." Michael kept his voice low so as not to wake Emma. "What are you doing here?" "Following up on your daughter's kidnapping. The FBI is now treating this as part of the larger investigation into Victor Molina. I need you to tell me everything that happened, and this time, Michael, I need the truth." "I already told the police." "You told them a story that doesn't make sense. A random rideshare passenger kidnapped your daughter as revenge for bad service? That's not what happened. Victor took her, didn't he? He used her as leverage to force you to stop cooperating with us." Michael said nothing, his silence its own confession. "I thought so." Reeves leaned back, her expression more disappointed than angry. "You made a deal with him. You sent us away, told us the meeting was a failure, and in exchange he returned Emma. Am I right?" "What would you have done?" Michael asked quietly. "If it was your child, what choice would you have made?" "I'd like to think I would have trusted my colleagues to protect my family while we caught the criminals. But honestly, I don't know. I've never been put in that position." Reeves pulled out her tablet. "What I do know is that Victor Molina is now in the wind with 47 stolen artifacts worth millions of dollars. He's probably already left the country. He'll sell those pieces to private collectors who'll hide them away where no one can recover them. And you helped make that possible. My daughter is alive and safe. That's what I made possible. For now. But Michael, do you really think this is over? Do you think Victor is just going to disappear and leave you alone?" She showed him the tablet screen, which displayed financial records. In the past 6 hours, 7 large wire transfers were made from Victor's accounts to buyers around the world. He's liquidating assets and completing sales. By tomorrow, he'll have made $50 million or more. And all of it is because you chose to protect him instead of your daughter. That's not fair. It's completely fair. If you trusted us, if you'd stayed cooperative, we could have caught Victor and Chen when they tried to take Emma. We could have ended this. Instead, you gave them exactly what they wanted: time to escape and complete their sales. And now your daughter will live the rest of her life knowing that criminals once kidnapped her and her father couldn't stop them. How safe does that make her feel? The words hit Michael like physical blows, each one landing with brutal accuracy. Reeves was right. He'd saved Emma from immediate danger, but had failed to eliminate the threat. Victor was still out there, still wealthy and free, still capable of returning if he ever decided Michael was a liability worth eliminating. "So what do I do now?" Michael asked hoarsely. "Now you tell me everything. Every detail of what Victor said, where Chen took Emma, any information that might help us track them down before they disappear completely. It's probably too late. They've had hours to flee, but it's our only chance." Michael looked at Emma, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the conversation happening 5 feet away. Then he started talking. He told Reeves about the boathouse, about Chen holding Emma, about Victor's phone call and his threats. He described the video Victor had sent, the jade Aztec mask sitting on the table. He recounted every word he could remember from their final conversation. Reeves listened without interrupting, making notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When he finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. "The private jet is helpful," she said finally. "We can check flight plans, see what aircraft left the area in the past few hours. It's a long shot, but it's something." She stood to leave, then paused. "Michael, you should prepare yourself for what comes next. The prosecutor is going to review your case, and this new information about you making a deal with Victor, it doesn't help your situation. You're no longer a cooperative witness. You're someone who actively helped a criminal escape." "I understand." "Do you? Because I don't think you fully grasp how much trouble you're in. You could be facing 10 years in federal prison. Emma would be a teenager by the time you got out. Is that really what you want for her?" Michael had no answer. He'd made his choice in the moment, driven by fear and love and desperation. Whether it had been the right choice or the wrong one, he'd have to live with the consequences. Reeves left. Michael sat beside Emma's bed, holding her hand, watching her sleep and wondering what would become of them both.
3 weeks later, Michael sat in a federal courthouse conference room across from his court-appointed attorney, Agent Reeves, and an assistant U.S. attorney named Carolyn Zhang. Emma was at home with Michael's ex-wife, recovering from both the kidnapping trauma and the latest round of chemotherapy. The doctor said her cancer was responding well to treatment. She might actually survive this. Michael wasn't sure he could say the same about himself. "Let me lay out where we are," Zhang began, her voice crisp and professional. "Michael Torres, you've been charged with transportation of stolen property, conspiracy to commit theft of cultural artifacts, and obstruction of justice. Collectively, these charges carry a maximum sentence of 25 years in federal prison." Michael's attorney started to object, but Zhang held up a hand. "However, the circumstances of your case are unusual. Agent Reeves has provided extensive documentation showing that you were initially manipulated by experienced criminals who exploited your financial desperation. You did cooperate with the FBI, albeit briefly, before making the decision to prioritize your daughter's immediate safety over our investigation." "That's a generous interpretation," Reeves interjected. "He lied to us and helped Victor Molina escape." "He saved his daughter's life," Michael's attorney countered. "Any parent would have done the same." Zhang ignored them both, focusing on Michael. "Here's what I'm offering. You plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to transport stolen property. The other charges get dropped. You'll receive a sentence of time served plus 2 years supervised probation, 500 hours community service, and restitution of the $5,000 you received from Victor Molina." Michael stared at her. "Time served? I've only spent 3 days in custody." "I'm aware. It's an extremely lenient sentence given the severity of your crimes, but the U.S. Attorney's Office has reviewed your case and determined that federal prison would serve no purpose here. You're not a career criminal. You're a desperate father who made terrible choices. We believe probation and community service will be more effective at rehabilitation than incarceration. There's a condition, Reeves added. You continue to cooperate fully with our ongoing investigation into Victor Molina and Chen Wei. Any information you remember, any contact they attempt to make, anything that might help us eventually catch them. You report it immediately. If you fail to cooperate, the original charges get reinstated. They're gone, Michael said quietly. Victor is probably in Singapore or Dubai by now. You're never going to catch him. Maybe not, but the investigation is ongoing. Reeves pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. 4 days ago, Chen Wei's body was found in a river in Thailand. Single gunshot wound to the head, execution style. Local authorities believe it was a professional hit. Michael's blood ran cold. Victor killed him? We don't know for certain. But Chen was a loose end, someone who could potentially implicate Victor if he ever got caught, and Victor has proven he's willing to do whatever it takes to protect himself. Reeves met Michael's eyes. That could have been you, Michael. If Victor had decided you were too much of a risk, if he'd thought you might eventually cooperate with us, you'd be in that river instead of this conference room. The words hung in the air like a threat and a warning. Michael had danced with monsters and somehow survived. But the dance could have ended very differently. I'll take the deal, Michael said. Zhang produced paperwork. Michael's sign were indicated, his hand shaking slightly as he put his name to documents that would define the next 2 years of his life. Probation, community service, restitution of the $5,000 he received from Victor Molina. But also freedom, the ability to be there for Emma during her treatments, the chance to rebuild something resembling a normal life. The deal was finalized. Zhang and Reeves left. Michael sat alone with his attorney, trying to process what had just happened. You got incredibly lucky, his attorney said. I've been practicing criminal defense for 15 years, and I've never seen the U.S. Attorney's Office offer a deal this generous for charges this serious. Why did they? Because Agent Reeves advocated for you. She convinced her superiors that you were a victim as much as a perpetrator. And because the prosecution's office recognized that your daughter's kidnapping created impossible circumstances. They could have pushed for prison time, but they chose not to. Her attorney gathered her papers. Don't waste the second chance, Mr. Torres. A lot of people went to bat for you. Don't make them regret it. 6 months later, Michael stood in a food bank warehouse organizing donated cans of vegetables as part of his court-ordered community service. He'd completed 200 hours so far, with 300 remaining. The work was simple, repetitive, and oddly calming, a sharp contrast to the chaos that had defined his life for those terrible days in March. Emma was in remission. Her hair was growing back, and she'd returned to school full-time. The foundation that Agent Reed had connected them with had covered most of the remaining medical expenses, and Michael had found legitimate work driving for a medical transport company, taking elderly patients to appointments, helping people with mobility issues get to their treatments. The pay was less than he'd made with the rideshare companies, but it came with benefits and a sense of purpose that had been missing before. He still thought about Victor sometimes, wondered where he was, whether he'd successfully sold all the artifacts, whether he ever felt guilt for the people he'd manipulated and the history he'd stolen. The FBI had briefed Michael on the ongoing investigation. 14 of the 47 stolen artifacts had been recovered from various buyers around the world, but the remaining 33, including the jade mask, were still missing. Victor himself hadn't been seen since leaving the country. Chan's murder remained unsolved, though everyone believed Victor was responsible. Michael. A voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to find Agent Reeves standing in the warehouse entrance, looking slightly out of place in her federal agent suit among the volunteers in casual clothes. Agent Reeves, this is a surprise. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check in on how you're doing. She walked closer, surveying the organized shelves of food. Community service seems to be agreeing with you. It's honest work. I don't mind it. Good, because I have some news you should hear directly from me rather than reading about it online. Reeves pulled out her phone and showed him a news article. The headline read, Interpol agent arrested in Amsterdam art theft ring. Michael's heart stopped. They caught him. 2 days ago, Victor Molina was arrested while trying to broker a sale of pre-Columbian artifacts to a museum director who turned out to be an undercover agent.
He's being held pending extradition to Mexico to face charges for the Museum of Anthropology theft. How'd they find him? Old-fashioned detective work. We tracked the sales of the recovered artifacts back to buyers, identified patterns in the transactions, and eventually located Victor through financial records. He'd been living in Amsterdam under a false identity, but he got greedy. He tried to sell more pieces, and that's what caught him. Reeves smiled slightly. Your cooperation helped, actually. The information you provided about his methods and contacts gave us leads we wouldn't add otherwise. Michael stared at the article, at the photograph of Victor being led away at handcuffs, looking smaller and older than Michael remembered. The man who'd seemed so powerful and untouchable was now just another criminal facing justice. What happens to the artifacts? The recovered ones are being returned to Mexico. The others, we're still searching. Victor is cooperating now, trying to cut a deal by providing information about buyers and locations. Most of the pieces will probably be recovered eventually. And me, does this change anything about my situation? No. Your deal stands regardless of Victor's arrest. You've fulfilled your obligations to the FBI. As long as you complete your probation and community service, this chapter of your life closes. Reeves left, and Michael returned to organizing cans, but his mind was elsewhere. Victor had been caught, Shen was dead, the artifacts were being recovered. The nightmare that had started with a simple rideshare pickup was finally truly over. That evening, Michael picked up Emma from school. She looked healthy, vibrant, chattering about a science project and a boy who'd asked to be her lab partner. Normal kid problems, normal kid happiness. Dad, can we stop for ice cream? She asked as they drove home. Sure, but just a small one. Doctor's orders about too much sugar. I know, but I finished all my homework and I got an A on my math test, so I think I deserve it. Michael smiled and changed course towards their favorite ice cream shop. As they drove, Emma talked about her day, and Michael listened with the kind of attention that he'd failed to give before the nightmare. He'd learned, in the hardest way possible, what truly mattered. Not money, not avoiding problems, not taking shortcuts or making deals with criminals. Just this: a healthy daughter, a legitimate job, a second chance to be the father Emma deserved.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.